Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
I was born on November 24th, 1946, at the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers in Burlington, Vermont. My given name at birth was Theodore Robert Cowell.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
My early life was complicated and built on a massive lie. For the first few years, I lived in Philadelphia with my grandparents, Sam and Eleanor Cowell. Because of the social stigma surrounding unwed mothers in the 1940s, I was raised to believe my grandparents were actually my parents, and my biological mother, Louise, was my older sister. When I was about 4, my mother and I relocated across the country to Tacoma, Washington, to live with family. In 1951, she married a hospital cook named Johnny Bundy. That conventional setup gave us a new family structure, and I took his last name, becoming Ted Bundy, though the underlying confusion of those early years always lingered beneath the surface.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
I started life as Theodore Robert Cowell, briefly went by the name Nelson when my mother and I first moved out west to distance ourselves from the past, and finally became Theodore Robert Bundy after my stepfather adopted me. Most people just knew me as Ted. Later on, when the law was looking for me, I used plenty of aliases like Chris Hagen or Kenneth Meisner to stay a step ahead.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
Outwardly, I was a well-behaved, quiet, and extremely introverted child, though I felt deeply disconnected from my peers and became a frequent target for school bullies. I spent a great deal of time isolated in my own world. Academically, I was intelligent and did quite well in my early school years, though my performance started dipping by the time I was in high school, as my focus shifted toward petty theft, vandalism, and lurking around neighborhoods at night. I went on to attend college, eventually graduating from the University of Washington with a degree in psychology in 1972, and I even spent some time attending law school at the University of Puget Sound and the University of Utah.
What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
It started small with petty shoplifting, stealing things out of cars and breaking into homes when I was a teenager in Tacoma. At the time, those acts just felt like a way to claim things I felt entitled to, but couldn't afford, or a way to ease my social anxiety and insecurity. But looking back, crossing those boundaries without getting caught opened a doorway. It fed a growing sense of entitlement and a secret life of voyeurism that gradually escalated into much darker impulses.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement? And what were the consequences?
As a juvenile in Tacoma, I actually had a couple of contacts with the police for suspicion of burglary and auto theft, but because I maintained a clean, polite exterior and came from a seemingly normal home, those records were expunged when I turned 18. My first major adult arrest didn't happen until August 16, 1975, in Granger, Utah. A highway patrol officer pulled over my Volkswagen Beetle because I was driving with my headlights off and ran a couple of stop signs. When he searched the car, he found a crowbar, a ski mask, handcuffs, rope, and trash bags. I was arrested for possession of burglary tools, which blew the lid off the secret life I had been leading.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It became entirely clear during my trials in Florida, particularly the 1979 trial for the Chi Omega sorority house attacks. It was the very first trial in American history to be nationally televised. I was serving as my own defense attorney for large portions of it, playing to the cameras, cross-examining witnesses, and turning the courtroom into a theater. Seeing the media frenzy, the packed galleries of young women watching my every move, and realizing my face was broadcasting into millions of living rooms across the country, made me realize my name was permanently etched into the public consciousness.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
If I look at the chain of events, the first real crack in my armor came from someone close to me. My longtime girlfriend, Elizabeth Klepfer, grew suspicious of my behavior, my strange absences, and the supply of items she found around the house. She actually called the police and gave them my name as a potential suspect long before they ever caught up to me on the road. My own arrogance and reliance on my charm eventually betrayed me too, making me believe I could outsmart the system indefinitely.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People might be surprised to know that in 1971, I worked at the Seattle Suicide Crime Prevention Center hotline. I sat on the phones for hours, talking people down from the ledge, offering empathy, and saving lives alongside a future crime writer named Anne Rule. It is a bizarre irony that I was capable of showing that kind of support while harboring such immense malice.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
During my trials, especially when I was acting as my own counsel, the public saw a confident, smiling, articulate man. They didn't see the intense pressure of trying to build a legal strategy from a jail cell with limited resources while knowing the state was actively trying to send me to the electric chair. I was fighting a desperate, exhausting war against prosecutors and the clock, all while maintaining a facade of total control for the cameras.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My defining adversaries were the investigators and prosecutors who refused to let me slip through the cracks. Men like Robert Keppel and individual state law enforcement teams across Washington, Utah, and Colorado pieced together the trail of missing women. In court, prosecutors like Florida's dynamic legal teams fought aggressively to break down my charm and pin the physical evidence directly on me.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
Privately, I was fighting the sheer exhaustion of imprisonment, managing complex legal strategies and dealing with intense psychological stress. I also orchestrated a highly unusual private life right in the middle of the chaos, managing to marry Carol Ann Boone right in the courtroom during my 1980 trial by taking advantage of an obscure Florida law, and later fathering a child while on death row.
What was your darkest moment, and was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
My darkest moments always involved losing my freedom. I couldn't stand being caged, which drove me to escape custody twice. The first was in June 1977, when I jumped out of a second-story law library window in Aspen, Colorado, and survived in the mountains for days. The second, much more desperate escape was in December 1977, when I lost weight deliberately, crawled through a light fixture hole in the ceiling of my cell in Glenwood Springs, and made a run all the way to Florida.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
The end came on February 15, 1978, around 1:30 in the morning in Pensacola, Florida. A local police officer pulled me over because I was driving a stolen orange Volkswagen Beetle. I resisted arrest and wrestled with him on the ground, but he managed to subdue me. At first, they didn't even know who I was. Once identified, I faced trials in Florida. In July 1979, I was convicted for the murders of two Chi Omega sorority sisters and received my first two death sentences. In 1980, I was tried and convicted for the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, resulting in a third death sentence.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you, and what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The media loved to build up the myth of the charismatic mastermind. While I used my appearance and a polite demeanor to trick people and evade suspicion, popular folklore definitely exaggerated how brilliant or smooth I actually was. Many of my actions were sloppy, impulsive, and driven by desperation rather than some flawless, calculated master plan.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on January 24, 1989. I was executed via the electric chair at the Florida State Prison in Stark, Florida.
What past regrets did you carry with you to the end? If you could erase one decision from your life, would you? Or was it necessary to become who you were?
In the days leading right up to my execution, when the reality of my situation finally settled in, I cooperated with investigators and confessed to taking the lives of at least 30 women across multiple states. I expressed a profound sense of sorrow for what I had done and acknowledged the absolute waste of human life, stating that a part of me was driven by a horrific, destructive compulsion that I ultimately failed to stop.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I would just say that looking back, the facade of normalcy can hide the deepest presentation of damage. It is a reminder that the monsters people look out for don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look just like the person sitting next to you in a library or working right beside you.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.